There are just certain prospects that no matter what, I just never get the hype and I never understand the buzz or attention surrounding them as an NFL prospect. I just don't. And as I go back and watch their film and study them closer, I feel like I'm even more validated in the way that I've previously thought and have even more trouble understanding why these guys ever got the buzz or attention that they did. A lot of times it's because they were productive college players, and we automatically assume because they were productive college players, that means they'll produce at a similar level at the NFL level. And we know that's just not the case. Sometimes guys that didn't produce at college do produce major at the NFL level, and sometimes guys that produce at a major level at college don't translate that to the NFL level. One of those guys I think will fit into that category for this year's draft class is Shilique Calhoun. He was a guy that's played at a big-time program in Michigan State, gotten a lot of attention over the years. He's been a very productive college player. And I've seen people mock this guy in the first two rounds of the draft the past 2 years now, and maybe people are high on him because of this or that. I'm just going to tell you the truth. I just don't see it, and I don't get it. I'm not saying the guy doesn't have a chance at the NFL level. I just don't see what all the fuss is about or why so many people are as high on him as they seem to be, because the film just doesn't measure up. Now, when I watch Shilique Calhoun on film, here's what I like. First thing you notice, 6'4", 255 pounds, pretty long arms, good height and good length, especially for a defensive end. You like to have that height and length coming off the edge whenever possible because you hope it helps a guy to set the edge. It gives him a better chance going up against offensive tackles at the NFL level that are going to average about 6'5", 6'6", and 305, 310 pounds with long arms, especially left tackles. So you want defensive ends, you want edge rushers with some length because they can be guys that won't be as easily taken off of the spot. They won't be guys that will be so easily overwhelmed or engulfed by those pass protectors, in particular on the blind side, on the left side. You also watch him too. The first thing that really will jump out to you, though, is his ability to anticipate the snap and get off the snap quickly. He does a really good job consistently throughout his film over the past couple of years, being able to read the snap count, anticipate the snap count, get off the ball, and get off the ball quickly and with a purpose. His first one or two steps are really good, and when you combine that with an ability to anticipate the snap as quickly as he does and react, more importantly, to that snap as quickly as he does and get off with some burst, that can cause some troubles. And I think, if anything else, it's going to be that ability alone that may help Shilique Calhoun find a role, find a niche, find a place at the NFL level. But he's a good, solid football player in the sense of he does a good job of keeping us contained. He's not a strong dude, but I think he does a good job of keeping contained on the outside, does an adequate job of setting the edge. One thing for a guy that's a redshirt senior that you would expect out of him is a guy that's got good awareness and understanding of the game, and he does have that. I like his football IQ. I also like that he has a little bit more of a refined pass rush repertoire. He has some more well-established counter moves as opposed to some of the other edge rushers in this draft, which you would hope he would since he's been at the college level the past 4 or 5 years. But he does have that. Now, I see a guy that in general plays pretty hard. And I'm a guy, especially when it comes to those guys in the front end, especially on the defensive line and the linebacking core, I value motor, effort, and hustle over muscle and skill sometimes. And I like guys that play hard, play to the whistle consistently, sometimes play through the whistle. And Shilique Calhoun does that. I don't feel like when I've watched him the past couple of years at Michigan State that I've seen a guy that's taken a lot of plays off or kind of half-asses it. I feel like I'm getting the most that I can get out of that guy consistently, and I think that appeals to a lot of coaching staffs, as it should. But for a guy with so much production at the college level and so much name recognition and so much buzz about him the past couple of years, simple fact of the matter is, even as long as he's been at school, he's got a lot of flaws in his game. The first and biggest problem that he has is a lack of strength. That lack of strength for a guy who most naturally profiles to be a 4-3 defensive end, he's just not very strong. And you would like him to be stronger, and honestly, a lot stronger than he actually is in terms of his playing strength. And you really see this in his lack of ability to consistently anchor. You see this in his inability to shed blockers. If he can't get past the offensive tackle in his first step or two, get with that great snap anticipation, it's over. Shilique Calhoun will be a complete non-factor. On top of that, for a guy that's already not that naturally strong, he plays sometimes with really, really poor leverage and pad level. Stands up way too tall, and he just doesn't have that natural strength to be able to overcome that. So again, with that strength, combined with that lack of bad leverage and pad level, this is a guy that can be very easily engulfed and taken out of the play, especially in the running game, but in the passing game as well. I also look at him too. Another major concern on top of that strength, the second biggest concern is got to be that overall lack of athleticism. Yes, he anticipates the snap quickly and he gets off the snap quickly. But if he doesn't beat you again in that first step or two, that's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot else there. And he doesn't demonstrate the hip flexibility or that overall athleticism in general, that lateral agility to be able to bend the edge, in particular as a 3-4 edge rusher, and makes me wonder if he's just solely confined to playing in a 4-3. But that's where, again, that lack of strength comes in, where he's going to have to be playing with his hand in the ground. That lack of strength, that lack of athleticism. I do have questions about what scheme he actually is going to fit best in at the NFL level, because being a guy that's only 255 pounds, if he's going to play defensive end in a 4-3, you want a guy, frankly, that's a lot more explosive than Calhoun, frankly, is. Or you want a guy that's a lot stronger than Calhoun actually is. And even when you look at his fit within a 4-3, you're talking about a guy that I don't think is explosive enough to get past left tackles, and he's not strong enough to get past right tackles. So some really serious concerns, combined with the fact that you're talking about a guy that's 24 this year. That's an old prospect with a lot of holes in his game. And maybe some of the holes, if they were certain technique things, what have you, can live with that. Not every prospect is going to be perfect. Frankly, no prospect is perfect. But you're talking about a guy that needs to get a lot stronger and play with better pad level on a consistent basis and needs to be much more athletic than he is. He might just be what he is. There's not a lot of ceiling here. I don't think there's a lot of room for growth potential in Shilique Calhoun's game, which really makes me pause about just how highly he should be drafted this year in the draft. Now, in terms of an NFL comparison, two names jump to mind to me. One was Michael Sam. If you remember, he was a 2013 SEC Co-Defensive Player of the Year, very productive college player, but not athletic enough to play in a 3-4, not strong enough to play end in a 4-3. A highly productive college player, but it wasn't necessarily going to translate to the NFL level. I also think of a guy like a Demontre Moore, another highly productive college player with good height and length, similar to Shilique Calhoun. Guys with very good snap anticipation and initial burst. That's something that Demontre Moore had coming out of Texas A&M. Same thing Calhoun has coming out of Michigan State. Guys that were highly touted, people talking about where they should go in the draft. At one point in time, we had talked about first-round picks. But then as people started to study more and they watched the film more, they realized that the height didn't match the reality. Guys that lacked overall athleticism for the 3-4, and their lack of strength is concerning for the 4-3, combined with that lack of athleticism and overall explosiveness. Like, I've seen a lot of people in their scouting reports talk about Shilique Calhoun and how explosive he is off of the edge. Maybe 1 to 2 steps of initial quickness, which, like I said, in part looks better because of his great snap anticipation. This is not an explosive edge rusher. And anybody that puts that narrative out there needs to stop, because they sound like a retard talking about it like that. Seriously, because he's just not. And overall, he's just not the prospect that he's been made out to be. He has some good traits, but none of them are great. None of them are elite. Even his snap anticipation and his initial burst off of the snap, they're good. They're very good, but I wouldn't classify them as special or elite. Just flat out, I don't see at this point in time, based off of the film of the past few years at Michigan State, where this guy fits into a 3-4 at all. I have concerns about him being able to set the edge on a consistent basis. Like I said, even though he does a good job of trying to contain, he's just not that strong. And that lack of athleticism and hip bend and flexibility and that poor leverage he plays with, he's not a good fit for a 3-4. I can't see how the hell he's going to be able to hold up in any type of coverage whatsoever. And his lack of strength holds him back as well. And, it's really concerning to me for a guy that's been in a big program like Michigan State the past 4 or 5 years. He should be stronger than he is. Because he was never going to be a big-time explosive athlete. He just isn't. And again, he is not. You would want him to be stronger and bigger than he actually is. My concern is just like sometimes at the college level, even though Calhoun found a way to be productive, is he could be taken completely out of plays by offensive tackles. And I have significant concerns and fears about the same thing happening to him at the NFL level against far superior tackles, especially on the left side. You're talking again about a guy that's going to be 24 by the time the NFL draft comes around. That's an old prospect that lacks big time athletic upside and lacks strength. I mean, how big of a pick are you really wanting to invest in this type of guy? You know, I've never really been big on Shilique Calhoun. I've always thought there was more to the story, and as I dug deeper and watched the film more, I felt validated in the way I thought. I've just never been high on him in terms of his NFL prospects. A good, solid college player that seemed to present himself well, seemed to be a leader on the defensive side of the ball, was a part of a very good program that did some very good things at Michigan State, making it to the college football playoff this year. It seems to me he would be a good guy to have in the locker room. A work hard, try hard type of guy. There are traits there that are admirable. But to me, he fits into the category of that day three type of pick. That productive college player that lacks one or two important traits to make them a star, but guys that if you get them into the right system and they can prove a little bit in those deficiency areas, could at worst case scenario be adequate to solid rotational players at the NFL level. And that's why I look at Shilique Calhoun as. I see a guy that should be no more than a fourth round pick at the earliest, and probably even more so, might even be in terms of overall talent, a fifth round grade. Now, with that said, he's either going to not make a team and make any type of impact or dent on anything because he just isn't strong enough and he just isn't athletic enough, or this is a guy that over his years at Michigan State has learned to compensate for those deficiencies by being able to do other things, having a nose for the football and finding a way to still get the job done. So if I'm a team, especially a team running a 4-3, come fourth, fifth round, yeah, I might gamble on Shilique Calhoun because, while I think his upside is very limited and there's not much of a ceiling there, the floor is potentially at least a solid rotational player. But, in terms of taking him in the second or third round, even in a weak class of edge rushers, I just think there's better talent out there. This is a guy that, to me, consistently has been one of the more overrated prospects in the past couple of years when it comes to the NFL draft. And I don't think you should be surprised at all when he's selected on day 3 of the 2016 NFL draft.